For part one of Mixx, I'm going to start with an example that is mostly really successful. Let's take a look. So this is pretty much what we wanted to achieve in this first round. We've got the screens comped in. They're looking good. There's the roto happening. We'll dig into that a little bit. And there is this grid showing us that we have a good, what I'm calling 2.5D track of the room. Let's take a look at that first. So this is very similar to what you saw me do. We have the stabilized layer that's been locked off so it doesn't get bumped or what have you. And that is this null, and it's just following the speaker. And then if we look at the plate, let's see, so I'm going to want to select the tracker, and I can go in here, specify this layer and which track. I think it's number 2. And there you can see what happened, really similar to what you saw me do, where you've got the corner of the speaker when it leaves the frame. We switch, but the attach point is over here, and that just keeps going. And then, of course, the camera is parented to that stabilized layer, and then you've got a 3D environment. So that's great. Good work. If you struggled with that, those were the points that were trackable, and the methodology was really similar to what you saw me do. Looking at the individual shots, that was a different take we just saw there. Yeah, everything's really nice here. In the pre-comp, we've got the roto on the fingers, and I can unhide the masks. So there they are. Those were done with mocha on the background layer. And they have motion blur. Well, let's see. There's a refined soft matte on these soft glove layers. This one's locked. There's that one. And then there is the graphic that has motion blur applied. And if we go into the comp settings, which I'll just do with Command K on my Mac, under Advanced, the shutter angle is 180 and -90. And that is key to make it -1/2 the shutter angle. And this 180 -90 is the magic cinema combination, and probably should be the default in After Effects, but never was made that. One thing I noticed in this one, things are also looking really good, but for example here the graphic seems to slide down in the frame a little bit. And if we look at this, here's the motion blur, and this layer has all the keyframes on it from Mocha, which was set in this background layer. But if I go to the comp settings in here, the shutter phase is 0. And watch what happens if I go negative. Nope, not positive. It's a little dark in here. -90. Okay, boom. It slid back up into place. So having it half the negative value basically is like setting it at 6 o'clock. And so that means it's going neither toward 3 or 9. I know that metaphor doesn't work at all, but essentially having it not be -1/2 will slide it closer to or further from the preceding keyframe. So it's essentially averaging between keyframes. And the more I say about this, the less clear it is. The bottom line is use -1/2 and your tracks won't slide around. The test of it is if I turn motion blur on or off, it shouldn't move, and it doesn't. Now, because the successes with this setup portion of the shot were also basically similar, I'm going to show you a shot that made just a few small decisions which really sent it in the wrong direction. So the sad thing about visual effects sometimes is it can't be a little bit wrong when it comes to things like matte lines and tracking. You really notice. So 3 things I want to call out here, not because I think you missed them, but because I want you to know for sure how to fix them. The first is this logo. And if you look at it, you can pretty much see what's going on. It is actually tracking, but it's tracking to what's in the reflection of the phone. Now, this is probably the most common thing that people run into with Mocha. It's something I want to make sure you know how to get around, because you're often going to be using Mocha to comp in screens. So this layer is locked. I'll just open it, or rather I'll open Mocha in it. And sure enough, the mask is around mostly the screen. So Mocha is mostly looking at what should be black, but is now moving around with white and black. Okay, I'll turn this layer off, and I'm not going to retract this, but I'm just going to show a couple ways you could do this. So first of all, Mocha doesn't care if you go outside the lines. In fact, it kind of likes it. So you could do the whole phone like this. And then if you add a second mask on the inside, that one will automatically become a holdout for the first one if they're both enabled. So if I just track a little bit, and I'm not going to track the whole thing, you can see that it's, despite that there's some reflections in there, it's doing a better job of holding it just like that. Now that slipped a little bit, so I might have to tweak that. A better way to do this, I'm just going to get rid of those, would be to not even bother with the multiple mats and see if you can make a selection that just has the outside. And this can get a little funky, but let's see. So we'll go like that. And the fingers, of course, may be moving as well. So this can get, super tricky. But now I've left the screen out completely, and I'm only looking at the edges. I could even let this get a little closer like that. So now let's see what happens if we just track that. So again, that is ignoring those reflections completely this time. And it's still giving me a good track. Okay? That is a simple thing. Another simple thing is these matte lines on these fingers, which look really bad. So there are a couple of things going wrong here. One is that the masks themselves probably aren't tight enough. You can see that they're going a little bit to the outside and letting in more of the black than they should. So that has to do with how those were drawn in Mocha. But even so, let's say it's an emergency, you're in a hurry, you've done the right thing here and applied Refine Soft Matte. I'm just going to solo this layer for a moment, and let's look at it over the beloved checkerboard. So there's that ugly blackness. What I'm going to do as a cheat is just extend the decontamination where smooth, which may or may not help us here, but then increase the decontamination amount. Now I can do this a lot in this case because these gloves are white. So now, whether I have smooth or not on, when I let it go at this very high level, things are white. And that's probably going to be good enough. You get into trouble when you've got patterns, colors, things like that with more detail. But in this case, it's just, the problem is simply that the black edges are really, really standing out. And so basically, they're solved. As I said, the better way would be to get better masks to start with and then apply Refine Soft Matte at closer to its default settings. And then finally, here, again, you can kind of see what went wrong. And unfortunately, it is a disaster and the kind of thing that makes you just want to quit when you have to turn in a shot like this. But honestly, let's look at the track. And if you compare it to the one we reviewed just before this one, you can see what happened. And specifically, there's a little trick in here that's missing. So let's go right to that frame. We didn't have to bail yet. You could have actually let it track all the way to the edge, but let's just say that we're finishing somewhere like that. Looks like something else kind of went wrong there. I can't tell, but let's just do this. So the thing I really want to make sure you get, because that's such a little trick that you need to know, or you just will fight it. Okay, I missed by a frame, but that's okay. So let's say at this point on the very next frame, I want to move this to the very other side and start tracking off of his hand. So actually, let me get this full screen. And this is going to be hard to see. But when I move my cursor in the middle, see the little four-sided arrow that comes up when I'm in the center? Okay, now if I move it now, I'm moving the whole tracker and the attach point. And the point, no pun intended, is the attach point needs to stay where it is. And so what I'm going to do instead is hold down the Option key, because I'm on a Mac. I'm going to move it to whatever I'm tracking over here. Let's say his knuckle. And I don't know if you can see it, but the attach point, it doesn't get any bigger when I zoom in, but it's still there. That little crosshair. Now, good golly, you're supposed to know that. It was hard for me to even remember what was the right combo. So again, it is get the crosshairs icon. So if I'm over the edge or outside, I just get the regular pointer. So I need it to be the crosshairs inside of the feature region, and then I need to hold down Option on a Mac or Alt and move it to the new tracking location, then continue the track. All right, so if those were tripping you up, go ahead and fix them, and then you're off and running to finish this amazing spot. Have fun.